Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
So when I was growing up, I wanted to be loads of different things, but I think the first sort of real conscious idea that I'd got around a proper profession, I actually wanted to be a management consultant. So I was a bit older. I wasn't still doing the paper round at that time, but right. I just, growing up in the 90s, it was a bit of a thing then, and it was, a bit of a burning the candle at both ends type of life, living at hotels and stuff. And I'd read a few books, and I just really liked the sound of it.
Yeah, sort of life on the road and being an executive
and going into businesses and I think just seeing the variety and solving problems and stuff like that. I mean, I guess we'll go on to what I do now, but it's sort of, I don't do that, but I do that sort of stuff in a fashion.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 1, and to my guest, Andrew Firth. This is another Zoom interview recorded on the 5th of January 2024. Hello. How are you? I'm still suffering with a bad back. I couldn't do much of anything last week, and that's why there were no episodes. Well, welcome back to Working Hours and to Series 5. Let's get some cracking episodes this year. I've recorded a couple already. So I don't know about you, but I'm a bit sick of the dodgy quality and erratic publishing schedule of this podcast. I intend to do something about it. I'm always trying. That's why I'm trying to interview 3 people a week this year. That's nearly a whole working weekday of recording. I've also invested in some new kit. More expense. Now, bear in mind that each one of those guests will take time to book in, and because loiners aren't volunteering for the project yet, I have to find all the leads and book all the guests myself. Once their episode is recorded, I then have to check the file and send it back to them. Then I need to wait for them to listen to it and get back to me. That can take weeks, months in some cases, even years in others. Then I have to proof and edit their interview and build their episodes, then publish it and post about publishing it. All of these basic things take time and energy for each episode. Making one podcast is easy. Making more is harder. Most people stop before 10. I've done 11 times that because I'm serious about this project. And because I'm serious about this, I've spent 4 years paying out monthly to make and host this show. Then there's social media work that has to be done to get any listeners and ideally to also get guests and build a brand through free marketing. I'm literally giving most of the hours of my life to this project now, and I want to do that. But I want it to be less stressful and more meaningful. I want to reach that bigger audience that I know there is for this show. It's not for everyone by any means, but it is a relaxed, casual show about deeply serious subjects presented hopefully in a very accessible, not too depressing way. I'm doomy, for sure. I'm ranty too, but I'm also quite a jovial chap whenever I can be. I prefer laughing to ranting. I'm going to keep plugging away with this. I'm going to try to bring you well-recorded interviews at a regular rate. I have more time and energy to dedicate to that end at the moment, but this is only a window of time, and it won't be a long one, especially if you don't help. So if you want this show to keep moving towards that 1,000 loiners goal, to come out regularly, to become a better product that more people can enjoy and benefit from, then you've got to help. You've got to listen to more of Working Hours. You've got to talk about it more, which you will if you listen to it more, because you'll notice loads of new things. And you've got to talk to me about it more, because everyone else will get sick of you talking about it and I won't. I've got 10 recordings banked for this series at the moment. So if they're not coming out regularly, then I'm stressed and frustrated. That's why that will happen. You can prevent that happening though. Please consider dropping some coin. You don't have to buy Patreon memberships. You can just send a tip of whatever you can or whatever you think the show is worth through Ko-fi. Details for how to do that will be in the outro. Send me emails. I'd love to read your emails out to the audience, and you'd like to hear other people's emails, wouldn't you? Email me if you wouldn't like to hear that, or if you would. Drop me an email at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. So this episode we have Andrew Firth. Andrew Firth has been involved with and worked in digital since 2001, formerly as MD of a design agency before setting up Ascensor in 2007. Over the past 16 years, Ascensor has grown to become an award-winning integrated digital agency specialising in delivering sales and lead conversions for clients across many sectors, serving both B2B and B2C audiences. As well as running the business, Andrew heads up the sales function, speaking to clients about new software development projects and digital marketing activities, all focused on driving growth for his clients. Right, let's do this. Episode 111 of Working Hours with Andrew Firth. Well, let's jump straight into it then. So what is it that you do now?
So I own Ascensor. So we're a digital agency. We help businesses to grow. So I do that stuff. I mean, I'm not, certainly not a management consultant, but I guess from a marketing perspective, I love I see businesses as obviously very different, but there's a lot of commonality, and you're either marketing a product or you're marketing a service. And there's a lot of, if you can think quite laterally, you can sort of see where one thing that fits one sector might fit another, and helping businesses to grow gives us a real sense of purpose. That's our why as a company. And I guess it probably stems from those, early ideas around becoming a management consultant to help businesses in the same sort of way. Mm-hmm. I did an MBA, which is like a Master of Business Administration qualification, and that sort of really got me. I did actually try to get into management consultancy profession, but I just wasn't old enough. I hadn't got enough experience, and then I guess sort of life takes over. But I just always like muse that I'm nearly 50, and I'm sort of getting to do the things I wanted to do before. I would be lying if I said I got a plan. You just fall into stuff and then you look back and think, oh, right, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'll often get on this. It seems like it's a story that leads to somewhere, when you're there, when you look back. But when you live in it, it's just stuff happening. And then you look back and you're like, oh, it seems like there was a plan there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I'd be lying if I'd said there was.
So how did you get into it then? Was it like you did the MBA and then, so where did that come? Was that sort of, you worked for a while and was like, I need to do an MBA to be doing this kind of thing, and then from there you built the business, or how did it come about?
No, so I actually went to do a degree in product design management, which was very sort of mechanical and electrical engineering based product design. And I did a work placement at an engineering firm in Leeds. So I did a placement there, and then they took me on afterwards to support the management of their computer controlled machinery, so CNC machines, and really enjoyed it. My dad said to me as I was sort of negotiating my first full-time role, make sure you ask them for management training, because they won't knock any money off your salary. They should just give you that anyway. So I actually found the course, and yeah, it was the MBA. So it's 3.5 years part-time immediately after my degree. So, and I guess that's where, not really having a lot of, I was probably too young to do an MBA because I didn't have, I passed it and everything, but I probably didn't have the life experience. back then Nokia was the biggest thing since sliced bread, and look where they are now. I remember that a tutor had said one day about having, one day we'll have flat screen TVs on our bathroom walls. And I know most people probably don't have one on the bathroom wall, but just the concept of it back then was just so alien. It was like, no, like
Mm.
totally cool type of stuff. But yeah, so it was a long time ago. And as I was working through the coursework, and certainly my final project, which was around improvements that we could make in the engineering firm around leadership and management and relationships between the shop floor and the office team, which was very fractious at best. They just weren't interested in a progressive. It was a city centre Leeds engineering firm that was just very traditional and just weren't interested in. They'd sort of paid. I sort of cajoled them into letting me do this course rather than them putting me on it because they were going to see where they were going to get benefit. They weren't interested in marketing. That I remember the owner said to me, we don't need to market this business. Business just comes to us. And sure enough, 15 years later, they were right down to a 3-day week at one point and stuff. And I think it's that type of. It was very restrictive for somebody like me that was quite go-getter, or I was ambitious. I wanted to get on. And I certainly got on well in the engineering firm. I was employed to look after the CNC machinery, but by the time I left, I was looking after the whole machine shop, including traditional machines. I'd introduced continental shift patterns and stuff like that. So I'd done a lot, but it was holding me back, and I felt they were holding me back with my ambitions and what I felt I could do. So I'd got a friend who'd got a design and print company, and he said he was looking to grow it. Was I interested in going and joining that business? And I just thought, yeah, why not? That was after 5 years. So I did feel like I'd put my time in the engineering place. I'd learned an awful lot. I'd learned a lot about what not to do as much as what to do, how to have different relationships with different people in the workplace to achieve outcomes and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I went to this design and print company, and we grew that really successfully, got into building websites, got into digital marketing, like really early on. We're talking around about the time of Amazon starting up, certainly around the time of common e-commerce websites where, businesses like us could implement sort of transactional facilities and stuff like that. So, yeah, I've been in, and I think, building websites as we do now, it's still producing stuff like the engineering firm. It's still, we don't have any materials, but we still have time. We still look at what a project is like, what's involved and stuff. And so I was there for like 7 years, but I just felt like there was more and more pressure put on me as the MD. We'd grown it to quite a few people, millions in turnover. And I just thought I could be just doing this myself now. So me and one of my colleagues actually set up an online retail business. So it wasn't a business in competition. It was selling toys and games. And that started, and that was just on the side. That started doing really well. So I thought, well, if we were to sort of resell that technology that we developed for our own e-commerce store into other businesses, we could probably do okay. And Ascensor started in 2007, and 16 years on, I'm talking to you.
Take us through a bit of the business story then. Like, how do you like to tell the story of getting the business going, getting it up and running? Like, how long did it take to sort of break even, go into profit? Was it a struggle early on, or was it success straight away, or how did it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advantage we'd got was the e-commerce business was doing really well quite early on, so it was generating cash. So that enabled me to recruit people I needed to do to get Ascensor started. The cost of developers and technical team members is significant and way above national averages, and so we needed to do that. I got myself out networking, started to build a good network of contacts, and BNI meeting that was there. I still a member of BNI. I've been there this morning. It's great from a personal development perspective, but also it's really good to have a network of other business owners, other like-minded people. So I mean, in terms of turning a profit, it's probably probably 2 years, I think. But we were self-funded, if you like, because we got the other business that was supporting that.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's a better result than Amazon, isn't it? How many years, like years
abso-
and years before they turned a profit.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I guess for us, we were providing a service. We are a service-based business, so it was is seeing your product as you see what you're selling as time effectively. We're obviously producing code and producing solutions, but ultimately we're selling hours. So we've got to account for the hours that we're paying for, if you like, in terms of
Yeah.
our team, and make sure that we're selling more of the hours than not.
Yeah. You mentioned the networking there. In terms of your kind of customer base, is it sort of more locally based because you're an online company, a digital company as well? So, potentially you can work all over the world. Like, do you work all over the world? And how much of that, what's the mix there?
Yeah, it's very small. It's international. We are just about to close on a client that we're actually in yesterday. It's an American company. The American sales director was over yesterday, um, and that's to handle UK digital marketing for this firm, but also US and Asia Pacific regions. Uh, that'll be one of only two live sort of non-UK clients that we've got on our books at the minute. In any year, we might work for one or two. I think it's a tricky one. I think that many, digital as an industry, if you like, as a sector, has evolved so quickly, and certainly the UK is one of the leaders in that. But we're 20 years into it as a service, if you like, and therefore many other countries have got their own skilled teams. And I think the UK certainly leads the way from a creativity perspective, and maybe inventing and coming up with new ways of doing things. But certainly you've got lots of countries, look at sort of Eastern European countries and India and over in Vietnam and stuff. There's lots and lots of territories now where you can get web development services. I get, and therefore I think there's less of a need for businesses outside of the UK to come to the UK. I think if they are going to offshore, they're probably more likely to offshore to some of those territories I've just mentioned because it's more cost effective. Quality control is a challenge with that, but I guess offshoring anywhere, quality control is a challenge.
Because it's that remoteness. And it
Yeah,
seems, like the technology makes the world seem smaller, but you're still thousands of miles away. You can't walk down to the shop floor and just go, what's going on?
absolutely. And I think that's what we've sort of found with even in our business with working from home, which
Mm.
was as full effect as a result of COVID. It's a similar sort of thing when you're together, you solve problems quicker. You've got somebody you can speak to when you have to do a Zoom call or a Teams call, whether it be with your own colleagues who are UK based or overseas or wherever. You've always got to have a purpose to do those things, and therefore sometimes things get missed. We tend to
Mm.
find. So we've tried because it's getting easier, but it has been hard to find good developers in the UK just because there's such a demand for them from UK businesses. Lots of big companies bringing development work in house. So we'd have looked at offshoring, and we tried it with a couple of projects last year, and it was just a nightmare for us. You spend more time managing and testing and um, you know communicating than you do actually doing the work. We definitely believe it's more cost effective to do work here rather than offshore it.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. So what I want to do with this, I want to start us on the social media question because I think this will be the most relevant and most interesting area to kind of bring things out and for the further discussion. So in terms of social media, um, so my focus is on the amount of time you invest on social media and whether you feel that you get a return from that time invested. So I speak to a lot of startups and stuff, and people who are working, like one person bands who are doing their own media and stuff. And a lot of the time it's kind of throwing stuff into the ether and hoping for the best. And some people hate it, some people feel it's really good and valuable. You're going to have your own spin on this, but yeah. So how much time do you spend on it? And as well, maybe when did it sort of become more and more important for your business and for you, I guess, as well?
Yeah, I mean, social media is really important to our business because we provide social media advertising to our clients.
Hmm.
I think it's so therefore you've got the need to be on social media within the business, within the teams.
Hmm.
And I guess, it can be quite distracting because, if you're working on a client's social media account and you've got your own notifications coming in on that account during the working day, that can be quite distracting for the team members. But I think that social media is sort of getting found out a little bit now. I think in terms of, just like if you look at some of the stories around, AI generated fake news and content and stuff, I think people are starting to wake up to the realization that social media needs to be taken with a bit of a pinch of salt. There's the whole, just on a personal note, people's Instagram profiles are not really those people in their truest sense. The photos that have been posted on walls might have taken 90 takes to get right, type of thing. It isn't the real sort of genuine person that you might know as a friend. And I think that for me, I think personally, I tend to just really use LinkedIn mainly.
Hmm.
I think LinkedIn is genuine. I think that when people aren't being genuine, they get called out on there, but in a professional way. And I think that linked, this talk about the 6 degrees of separation. Apparently we're only six contacts away from pretty much anybody. I think it's amazing what sort of happens on LinkedIn and how you can um, get your message out. I mean, it's obviously it's here to stay. It's quite interesting to think about how generations use social media. I mean, my kids now will only communicate really on Snapchat with anybody else. They're not on Facebook. One of the reasons kids don't want to be on Facebook is because the parents are on there. Whereas, for instance, myself, I mean, WhatsApp isn't really social media, but it's another way of online communication. But, how that is with Messenger or SMS, I don't know where to look. People say they sent me a message 4 or 5 days ago. I'm like, no, you haven't. It's like, oh, I sent you on this. Oh, yeah, I didn't check there. So there's just and I think it's the same with social media from a business marketing perspective as well. Obviously, TikTok's become huge in terms of the ability for brands to grow and influence. And that's only been in the last couple of years. So it's ever changing, it's ever evolving. But at the same time, I think as consumers, you just got to be really careful that what you're seeing on your screen isn't necessarily true or good
Or real.
or even real. Yeah.
Or created by a person.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many warnings before Christmas around, fake e-commerce sites, promoted through social media. You provide your card details and then obviously no product turns up, but you could be spoofed and stuff. So yeah, I think, for me, in terms of what I put on social media, I realized maybe 5 or 6 years ago that you need to make sure that you understand I mean, it's quite, don't take this the wrong way, but I think posting anything on social media is quite narcissistic anyway, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
narcissistic behavior. And so I think you've got to make sure that when you expressing yourself, however you do in social media, that you're only allowing people that you want to see that stuff to see that stuff. So for me, I'll use LinkedIn for business.
Mm.
Facebook, because I've been on it for ages, but I removed basically, I got married last year and or the year before last, and I decided to, if anybody didn't interact with my wedding stuff that I put on Facebook, I was removing them as a friend, because I just thought that's a great barometer. You're not a
Yeah.
friend if you don't appreciate the fact that I've just got married.
Mm.
So, and what I decided to do was set up an Instagram account whereby I could put stuff out there that I didn't really care whether people saw or not.
Yeah.
So I sort of have different things for different ways to express what I'm doing.
Yeah. I don't know if you'll agree with this, but it seems like a lot of people, they rush to the business and they don't think about any research beforehand. And I think a
Yeah,
lot of the time it's like the research is integral, like, to see if you've got a business there in the first place.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think there's lots of ways to do research, isn't there?
Yeah.
Don't just look at one channel. There's plenty of channels and plenty of ways to suss things out.
Mm.
I saw a really good LinkedIn post the other day about somebody who'd got set up a business and then um, made out that they'd sold that business to um, it was Airbnb,
Mm.
and Airbnb didn't know anything about it. So Airbnb responded on social media to say, we've never offered to buy this business and we've got no intention of doing it.
Mm.
This guy had basically won loads and loads of awards off the back of this software that didn't really exist, created LinkedIn profiles of employees that didn't exist. I think what he was trying to do was set himself up as a business guru. Hey, I've built up a tech
Mm.
business and sold it to Airbnb within 3 years. But you can't that's the great thing. And the great thing about what we do is business, everything's data driven. So there's footprints, there's
Mm.
metrics, there's information. It doesn't take, it takes 5 minutes to check out what somebody's saying.
Mm.
Somebody put something on social media about award wins or about their business value or stuff like, there are places to go and check this stuff out.
Mm.
Uh, just Googling for a start, but then also, looking on Companies House and
Yeah.
things like that. So um, it's, I think there's been some great programs on Netflix, particularly like the Tinder Swindler and the Catfish one and stuff like that around what what people have done and what they've been able to get away with. And I think they're great because they alert the general public around like, hang on a minute, this might not be real. And I could probably work that out for myself if I just do a bit of my own due diligence.
Mm.
So, yeah.
And it operates very much on it's one of those areas of society where it's just like everybody knows what they're doing, but they don't. Like people that have grown up with it, maybe that certain things, but like a lot of people have no idea what they're doing when they go into an online space, and it's kind of like you can't necessarily ask now.
No, no.
It's an expectation that you should know. You should have just imbibed all of this, but if people don't tell you, you don't know. Like just while we're on this, I want to just kind of pick your brains on so thinking about the kind of outsourcing thing again. And we mentioned AI and kind of automation, automation and sort of saving money, and then the opposite side of having a real person. I mean, I'm guessing you're kind of on the side of a real person doing a real job for someone. But there is a place for automation as well. So sort of where does that sit for you at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I like to be efficient,
Mm.
and I think automation and AI definitely helps that. I think particularly, so where we'll typically use AI is in generating content, and then that gets you 80% of the way there. I've prepared like contracts and stuff like that by, as long as you get your, I guess, your search query really accurate,
Mm.
then you pull down some good content that just needs, that it gets you started on what might have been a big task. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing for me. It's like, instead of just always trying to get loads of little things done and putting off the bigger things because, you're only achieving one thing, it just gets you started. It turns bigger, more manual tasks into shorter ones. I think that it's not going anywhere, is it? And I think businesses need to figure out how they can take advantage of it rather than resisting it, because there's nothing they can do about it. And I think unfortunately, unless you embrace new stuff, you fall behind. We can sort of see this with businesses, that have businesses that have gone bust, big companies like Wilco's and people like, they're businesses that haven't really adapted to online it's certainly from an e-commerce perspective. They've been left behind because other more nimble businesses have been able to get in there and grow quicker. And I think, so they didn't adopt the internet as fast as other companies, and then they're not here anymore. And that's just life, I think. And I think that the same is there with AI. We all know about Chat GPT, but I think it's where AI then goes beyond that, and we start to find AI, machine learning, and stuff like that within products that we're buying and other stuff. So we're all going to be exposed to it. Cars are going to be full of AI in the next 30 years, and sooner for people that can afford it, I would expect.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword as well, though, isn't it? Like, what do you think on a kind of protection side for a business of like, because we've mentioned sort of people being not the best actors on the internet, but also kind of it will be easy to kind of replicate a lot of things via AI quickly and easily. Like there are as many threats as there are opportunities. Do you think that's something that businesses are thinking about yet?
No, but it's quite interesting because there is an ISO standard now being produced for
Mhm.
AI. We're an ISO accredited agency for security and quality. But then there's, I do think that AI is very frightening to a lot of people and governments and stuff like that. And there's obviously been committees of even the owners of businesses that have been developing AI wanting to put the brakes on things to make sure that we're doing everything in a way that is safe for humanity, if you like. So, um, so yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you sort of feel like it's something that would be very difficult to control and very easy to get out of control. Yet
Mm.
we're trying to put controls around it. So interesting to see how that goes. But at the end of the day, we're in a capitalist society, and there's commercial benefits for using it and doing these things, and that generally wins out in my experience.
Yeah. So we'll do COVID next. So I want you to sort of think back here to going into lockdown and whether at the time did it lead to a massive increase in work and workload, or was it a huge drop off of workload? Did you like, how did you manage that? Was it a matter of like pivoting loads of stuff? And then the other side of the question is coming out of COVID, has anything sort of changed for you permanently? This was a weird question a couple of years ago of like people had to think, and now it's like, yeah, there's no way it didn't change things for everyone. So, well, at least that's the impression I get now. But yeah, so what was your kind of COVID experience work-wise?
I think COVID, I mean, one of the things I was really pleased with was that as a business, we decided to like lock down the business before the government said we had to lock down. So
Hmm.
a week before we made that decision to, because as an ISO 27001 accredited firm, we have to have, um, disaster recovery processes and all of these things. So we have to be able to very quickly down tools here and be somewhere else working. So it was quite good for us to make sure that worked all okay. And then the government locked us down. We immediately furloughed probably 20% of the team, but within 4 weeks they were all back.
Hmm.
We work in digital transformation, so we found that many businesses, needed digital to stay in business. Got a great case study for Magnet Kitchens. It was taking 5 days for them to, before COVID, it was taking 5 days for them to get a trade application form written out in a showroom and then sent off to accounts, and credit check done and then account opened. and people couldn't get into the showrooms, but they could still deliver
Mm.
kitchens. So we built like a trade application process that did an online credit score, automatically created an account, and stuff like that. So I think one thing that COVID did was sped up the adoption of digital technology, which is great and great for a business like ours. We've got a lot of businesses that operate in e-commerce. In fact, my wife's got a gifts business that sells online. It went absolutely bonkers because people weren't leaving their homes as much, but they weren't seeing people, so they were much more likely to gift and send stuff in the post. That was very good. I think that one thing that it has done is, um, everyone went out and got dogs, didn't they? So then it meant returning to work was harder, and we've certainly had challenges with that. I think it was in April this year we said we wanted everybody back in the office 3 days a week, and COVID was several years prior. So, I don't think we're as efficient when we've got everybody, when we don't have everybody together. They don't have to be together all of the time, but they do need to be together some of the time.
Yeah.
People that we recruited during COVID, some of them didn't stick around for very long, and part of the reason I believe is they never got engaged with our culture here.
Yeah.
Didn't make friends. They were just
never met their co-workers in person, Yeah.
They were just a number, and very difficult to manage, very difficult to. I know what I'm like working from home, and I'm the business owner. I'm not as efficient as I am in the office. There's too many distractions. I'm not watching telly, but I might be in the fridge a bit too much or whatever. It's hard, and I think that when you have a problem, you're much more likely to continue having the issues or staring at a blank screen or whatever when you're remote than you are if you're around people that you could just say, "Oh, can you give me a hand with this?" So I think it's been good for our sector in that speeding up the adoption of digital technology. But I just think that there's it's made that the whole period of time has changed. I think the way that certainly Gen Z was maybe going that way anyway, but it's certainly changed the way employees or potential employees see the balance between work and life. I'm maybe a bit old school, and I believe that work is you've got to love your work. You spend a lot of time at work. You've got to enjoy it, but at the same time, you work for a company, and the company, it's a transactional thing. You go, you do a good job, and in return, the company pays you a good salary. And I feel that there's been a lot more demands placed on employers as a result of this change of attitude towards what work is. And I love the idea of digital nomads and people who are able to work from anywhere and all of that sort of stuff. It's cool, and it's cool for them, but it's not right for us to be a remote business. We were never set up that way. Some businesses have always operated in that way. And it's not a trust thing. It's an efficiency thing. It's a quality thing. And it's a community thing. For me, and what Ascensor is, and what our culture is, and how we've grown. And it looked, what was quite ironic was last year Zoom actually told their team that they needed them in the office. Sky and Facebook and Amazon and all these other businesses were very public in that. And again, we'd actually made that decision before all of that stuff in the news. We made the decision, and from the 1st of April, everybody was back in 3 days a week. And there's probably 50% of people are actually in every day because they like it. So we've got flexible hours as well, and all of the stuff that you would expect. But there has to be some, I guess, control from the business's perspective around managing what they're actually getting and with the result that they're providing for clients. I know there's a friend of mine was doing the 4-day week, and it's all of the stuff around that was, well, we only actually work 80% of the time, so you can do that in 4 days. And I just don't buy it, because I think that, everybody needs downtime at work. Everybody needs to be able to get away from the screen and be non-productive to be productive. So I
Mm,
believe 4 days would actually turn into 3.25 days. And you've got customers who need you. And if it's quite difficult to control who's actually working, if everybody's got a day off each week, is it the same day? Is it different days? And
mm,
if your team isn't huge, then customers are probably not going to get the same level of service. It's quite hard, isn't it? Because unless things change, you never know what they're going to be like, and you never know whether they're going to be better or not. Certainly, as a youngster, I would have loved to have had a 4 day week, but I think as a business owner, I'm looking at it from a productivity and a business stability perspective, and I think that um, all of all of these things have sort of happened as a result of COVID.
mm,
I do think that the UK economy is sort of waking up to a little bit that generally speaking, as a country, we're not performing as effectively as we were before, when it's service based, when it's because you've also got to think, we do have some manufacturing left, and we do have industry in the country that doesn't facilitate working from home at all yet.
mm,
And in those businesses, they have massive challenges because the office staff do want to have working from home days, yet
mm,
the rest other people in the company can't do that. So
mm.
that causes friction, and it's just because of the job that they do. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is from a downside. But I think but at the same time, I do feel that before that we didn't really have working from home. If people wanted to work at home the odd day or whatever, they did, and now we've got it, and it's
Mm,
not full time. It's they're in the office at least 3 days a week, so
mm,
got a good nice balance, and it feels good. I don't have
mm,
concerns, and we're more efficient by that. So.
mm.
I think I think we've sort of found our way back to a good situation.
Yeah, I mean it's really difficult because it was a whole sort of negotiation because there's the whole sort of through COVID, all of the mental health well-being and all of that and the sort of realization of isolation and so on. And there are a lot of people, like I've met people who they will not work from home. They just don't want to. They had to through the pandemic, and then they're like, I do not want to do that. And they
Yeah.
would much rather come into the office, even when they've got flexibility to not have to do it. And equally the other side. And then you've got the whole like equality, inclusion, diversity agenda of like, you give that accessibility to people and so on. But yeah, like you say, it depends what you kind of want to do. And it's difficult for you, like you say, because you weren't originally designed to be like that, but you've been kind of pulled into that way. Is there a pull as well to kind of extend your hours? Are you constantly being pulled to sort of be open 24/7, be available 24/7?
No, we do provide sort of some out of our support, and I think that's where flexibility comes in really well, and
Mm,
particularly some people when they're working at home. As long as people are doing the hours that they're contracted to do,
mm,
I don't really care when they're being done.
mm,
So it does give us, and certainly flexible working means that we've got people starting at 6:30 in the morning,
mm,
but they're done by 2:30 in the afternoon.
mm,
But other people that are coming in at 9:30, 10 o'clock. So automatically we've got a longer working day as a company, and individuals are doing their bits within that. So the office is open pretty much 12 hours a day, plus then if people need to do stuff or they're at home or whatever, then we fill that where we need to. Where it comes to software development, it doesn't really matter when it's been done or where it's been done.
mm.
My thing is as long as it's been done right and
Yes.
planned.
Yeah.
So it's about the output and the outcome.
Mm.
Uh, it's just that if you're in the office, you're more likely to deal with your problems quicker. I think that's the main point for me.
Yeah, and there's more people to rally around. Like when people are working remotely, if something goes off, unless you're actually going to get on the phone and be like, right, everybody on, it's a bit harder to be action stations, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's too many distractions as well. And I think even when you do have those Teams calls or Zoom calls, if it's a group call with multiple people on it and you're not in that conversation, that moment of conversation, it's too easy to be distracted.
Mm.
Um, when we were doing the networking events, you know, you'd sort of, be focused when it was your bit, or I would be, and then I'd be doing other stuff and I couldn't stop myself because I like to be efficient. If an email's coming in and I've still got two ears to listen to what's going on, but I'm not really engaged. And I think that's vital. If you're going to be productive, and we get that when people are together face to face.
Mm. One last kind of bit on this area. So in terms of the commercial property, like, so this is kind of for your business, but maybe also businesses that you've worked with. Did you sort of have to downsize the office space, or have you now downsized the office space, or has it allowed you to sort of get bigger? Like, how's that affected things for you?
So we were so excited in December 19 when we moved into our detached glass building on Gelderd Road. And looking back, if we hadn't have got in December 19, we'd have had to sign another lease on the previous building, which just wasn't suitable for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So lockdown happened in March 2020. So we got it fitted out, finally got the internet working, and then it was like, right, we're now at home.
Mm.
So we got a slight reduction, I think, on our rates. Landlord wouldn't do anything for us. So it was my goal to really get people in the office as soon as I possibly could after
Yeah.
after the lockdowns ended. And so I did things like we put in really nice outside grassy area with benches. We built a stand-up desk, a really nice stand-up desk in the office, and it was like releasing all of this stuff on Teams, saying, when we get back in, we're going to do this, we're going to have this, and going to have that. So it was really, and I think maybe that's partly where my reticence to working from home comes from. I've created a really amazing space here, and I just want people in it and using it. So yeah, no, we were sort of stuck with the building, but the building it's like a giant billboard.
Mm.
You know, our rent is less than it costs to have a digital billboard down on the sort of way into Leeds per month, and we really really stand out, and we've certainly done well as a business because of the building and the presence that we've got. So I've got absolutely no regrets at all with it.
Mm.
But yeah, it could have all been very, very different.
Mm. Yeah, and that's, to be in terms of your outgoings, and like to have that during lockdown, and you're just like, I'm paying for nothing here. This is so painful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's, I mean, I guess landlords are in the same boat with everybody, aren't they? And I really feel for them. I feel for
Mm.
students, students being made to take rents on houses and then they couldn't turn up to university. They weren't turning up to university. They were doing remote learning. They could have stayed at home and stuff. So it was just a bit bonkers, particularly around property, I think.
Mm. Yeah. And it's
And
that realization for people of, your spend is someone else's income.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and it shows how there's a system with loads and loads of moving parts, and then you suddenly break it, and then it's like the fallout's so different for everybody.
Let's do Brexit.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll preface this with, because Brexit happened sort of through COVID. For some people, it's hard to kind of draw them apart. But my question on Brexit is basically, did it affect your work at all? Has it affected your work at all? And if it has, what's that effect been? Has it been a good effect, a bad effect, or just no effect?
Yeah, Brexit hasn't really affected our work, but it's certainly affected our clients.
Right.
Where we've got clients who sell online, particularly businesses that are importing products, Brexit has had a major impact from, I think things are calming down now in terms of the cost of shipping. There was a massive increase in costs, but then there's also a big increase in the load on businesses to handle compliance and paperwork and all of that stuff. Shipping goods internationally meant that there would be import duty and other uh, taxes placed on the person receiving the goods, which were being charged. And certainly for my wife's business, the gifts company, she stopped sending anything overseas for a period of time because it was costing more in import duty for the consumer than it was to buy the goods in the first place. So I think Brexit has been, it's one of those things that we're going to have to live with. I think it's done, and I don't know. I mean, globalization has been, I think, great for the global economy to help. I suppose, sort of consumerism and businesses, certainly through digital, to grow and reach. And then all of a sudden, there's limits been placed, and I think the main thing, one of the key drivers of Brexit was to reduce migration, wasn't it? And it hasn't worked. And it's just created more red tape than we had before. And, anything that stops trade or restricts trade is not good for business.
Mm.
Certainly not good for the clients that we've got that do trade overseas and import goods and sell stuff overseas.
Mm. I mean, you obviously said you like to try and employ local and you like to rather than outsource. Have you had to bring anyone in at any point? Like, or I'm thinking here, like, how much hassle is it to sort of, if you need a specialist worker to bring them in, and like, how much has it really increased visa hassle or anything like that? I mean, if you don't know, you don't know, but just if you have any insight.
Yeah, we have employed overseas workers directly here in the UK, so people that had come on a working permit.
Hmm.
We haven't. We've got a lad here that came over from South Africa, and he's still with us. But other than that, there are a lot of there's a lot of talent in the UK, and we recruit and we just try and find the best people for the job. And if it happened to be somebody that was here on a visa or whatever, then and they were right for the job, they were right for the job. I don't think Brexit has worked at all in terms of what it was designed, why people wanted Brexit. And but I think at the same time, formally, people from other countries who were coming here to work are doing less of that. I think certainly, I mean, there was a time when there was an awful lot of Polish people here in the UK. Our finance manager is Polish. We've got a Polish. Well, she's Polish, but she was living and was working here before we recruited her.
Mm.
We've got a data science guy who was born here, but he's Polish.
Hmm.
But apparently, a lot of Polish people, working at home is actually better than coming here to work now. I think that the amount of money that they can earn and
Hmm.
all of the other things, there was, I think people were in uproar, weren't they, about people coming to the UK to work and then sending the money home and stuff. And
Hmm.
all of that sort of negative um, attitude that sort of fueled Brexit, I think. And the reality is, I think certainly in many sectors, we need overseas workers because I don't know whether it's like, British people think these jobs aren't good enough for them or what, but I spend a lot of time in the Lake District. There's pubs and hotels that really struggle. There's pubs that only open 2 or 3 days a week because they can't get the staff rather than they've not got the customers. And I think they're the unexpected consequences. It's those potential employees that we're missing out on as a country. And I think that it's a shame. It's a real shame.
I mean, like, I won't go off too far, but I will just say on this because of what we've discussed so far. Like, I used to work. in the unions, work in training, lifelong education, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and the argument at the time when they were doing like skills agenda and things like that, which you're probably aware of, you'll have heard of all of that at the
Yeah.
time. Um, it was this battle between the government and businesses of like, yeah, we really need skills and education and continual development and so on. You pay for it. No, you pay for it. And there's been no like, so where we've had to bring in skilled workers for skills shortages and stuff, and if where they've gone, there's been no effort to kind of replace that, like train people up. Like there's no support, there's no incentive, there's no program of like, all right, well, we need these people. We're going to train a whole bunch of them, and we're like, because you can't just take something away and, well, we can now because we do it all the time, but you shouldn't just take something away without putting something in its place to serve the function that it did.
Absolutely. There was no plan, was there, at
No,
all? I mean, I think the whole thing was, you know, there was a lot of pressure to do the referendum.
it was stumbled into backwards, which is like what most of our problems seem to be now. Is like we seem to not look where we're going and just fall into it backwards.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's the small businesses, isn't it, that have to pick up the pieces with these things.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I do just it's it was I think it was just a disastrous thing. But I guess we're coping okay, and that's the main thing, isn't it? Deal, you've got to play with the hand that you've been dealt, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, and you're always going to get, as COVID showed us, you're always going to get external shocks that you have to deal with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, okay, so speaking of which, let's go on to climate change. So, from a climate perspective, Leeds has declared a climate emergency, so it's relevant to working in Leeds. For your business, is there anything you can do? Is it on your radar? Is it something that you deal with, or is it just not something you have time to think about?
Yeah, I mean, we're a user of energy, computers. So we're always looking at ways that we can, reduce our carbon footprint. And I dare say, businesses like ours, and certainly some in Leeds, have already gone down the B Corp route.
Hmm.
So I think that, it's one of those things where it'll be the bigger businesses that we want to work with as suppliers that force smaller businesses like ours to have a proper strategy and proactive approach to reducing their carbon footprints. If you don't have certain, that's why we've got ISO. But some of our clients wouldn't work with us unless we got that, and it's a great thing to have, but it's driven through commercialism, which is similar. And I think it's sort of the way it's the only way to make small businesses that are busy, do things differently. If there's a commercial, either commercial benefit or a negative impact by not doing it. But yeah, I mean, I think climate change is, it's indisputable, isn't it? And I think that the great I guess any positive side of that is the shift in the economy and businesses that are looking to make a difference and develop products and develop services to, it's a new economy, isn't it? But like with anything, you've just got to be wary about what the goal is. It's got to be about saving the planet and not about making money.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know whether it's appropriate to talk about diets and stuff, but the whole thing around veganism and stuff,
Hmm.
I get people have got their choices, but you've also got a lot of businesses that jump on the bandwagon of that and are essentially, overcharging for stuff, ripping people off, and the cost of producing vegan products is much heavier load on the climate than eating meat and stuff like that. Somebody was telling me about the amount of water it takes to grow an avocado or an almond. It might have been an almond. Uh, that's why there's water shortages in California, which is meaning they can't put these fires out, and they're having the fires in the first place. And
Mm.
there's a trade-off, and I think it's just important that for everybody, we don't just jump on bandwagons. We look at the real sort of benefit to the planet of doing these things.
Okay, so I'll put that back to you in terms of your policies and things that you've had to develop. How do you go about that? I mean, like, do you do an assessment within a project of like, is that part of the calculation of what's the effect? What would be lesser impact? Do you sort of do a cost benefit outside of just the cost benefit? Does that make sense in terms of just more than just the monetary value, I guess?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I mean, we'd probably want to make sure that we were only working with ethical businesses,
Hmm.
businesses that are, oh, I mean, that aren't causing harm.
Mm.
I think in terms of from a project perspective, I mean, like I say, we're a business that effectively sells time, so
Mm.
that's all we have, if you like, as our product, and we deliver a service for that time. So there's not really a lot of difference that we can make on a project by project basis. It's yeah, it's a funny question because I think the thing is as long as if we're looking to keep our own carbon footprint as low as possible, then that's the main thing because it shouldn't matter who we're working for at any given time. It shouldn't stop us from doing that still.
I mean, from a market perspective, then, like as a product, or if you even have any products, is it something that's popular? Is it something that people want to buy? Obviously, you've said that people want the accreditation and the ISOs and to be working with companies that are doing the right thing, for want of a better phrase. Like, do you see demand from customers for any of this? Like, is there a drive? Because within the interviews, I felt that there seems to be quite a big appetite for a lot of change that you don't necessarily see from how things are presented in the media. Are you
Yeah.
finding the same, or is it from a business level, it's kind of that's an additional cost too much, or
Yeah, I don't think at the moment our customers are concerned with.
they're too busy trying to just survive?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they're not asking us what we're doing
Hmm.
to be more um I guess um supportive of climate change and the planet and stuff like that. I think it's down to businesses to do the right thing themselves. I it's something that it's things like the electric vehicle sort of question. Well, electric vehicles are still very, very unaffordable for many people. I know there are incentives for businesses, but for most people out there, they're very, very unaffordable. Unless they become more affordable, then people just can't do that trade to move over to it. Like with anything, as soon as it's almost as soon as the government put incentives out there, like it happened with solar, it's happening with EV. They then start to take it away as well as soon. There aren't enough, I think, business benefits yet to fully adopt some of these technologies that we probably will need to do in the next sort of few years to become carbon neutral as a country.
I don't think there's enough. I don't think the lobby has enough money. I don't. And it's the ones that do have the money are the energy companies still, because the whole economy comes from them essentially. Because without that energy, there's no machines running.
It does. It does. I think that, they're making money regardless, aren't they? And
Mm.
a lot of the cost of living crisis has been driven by the rise in energy costs as a result of, tensions overseas and
Well,
stuff.
and as a result of their losses during COVID as well, like the energy price, like the oil price went negative. This is one of those things that the news conveniently forgets that they said. Like they do all this stuff and they say all this stuff, and then 5 minutes later they're like, "Oh, we never said that. Oh no, we don't
Yeah.
talk about that."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like they're recouping their losses as much as they're dealing with global events.
Yeah. but they're still making the the same profits.
Mm,
When there's an energy price gap and stuff, they're still making the same profits, and
yeah.
it's the consumer that suffers every time for
Mm,
these big businesses, and you know that's why it's important, particularly from climate change, that it's not done as a saving the planet isn't a commercial um, mission, is it? And I think that's one of the things that I think is dangerous, where you've got businesses that are selling products and doing stuff that aren't necessarily they're doing it for their own gain rather than for the planet's benefit.
mm. If there was a UBI, would that change your work at all? I'm expecting the answer to be no for this, but like, would you work more or less? Would you work differently? Would you say if you'd have been getting it a few years back, would you have even gone and done this business? I think the answer to that is yes. Like, what's your take on it? Do you think it would affect the way that you work?
So by universal basic income, it's a bit like the way a communist society would work, is it? In that it's a single salary for whatever you.
No. So you can work on top of it. Like you can do any other work that you want to do. No one's
Okay.
stopping you from doing that. It's just an amount that everybody gets. So if you're homeless, you get a set amount every whatever it is, month or whatever. You
Yeah.
can spend that however you want. And one of the things that they find is once people got a regular amount, they can plan. And from that, they can improve. So it's just to give a baseline so that ideally people can't slip below it.
Yeah. And I think in terms of Ascensor, our because of what we do, salaries are a lot higher than the um,
Average, yeah.
average. And so I don't necessarily think that, I mean, and as well, I guess with universal basic income, who's paying that? Is that to be paid by the government or?
Yeah, it come from the government. So,
Yeah. So I guess most people would see that as a top up, if you like. It's a basic amount of money, but then when you're working is the top up from it.
yeah.
So would it mean that people could then would it I would guess that would then reduce the burden on companies, because you could effectively pay less for the same amount of work if the government were providing a percentage of the total income.
Potentially that depends on the market conditions. I mean, if you've got a company, a lot of companies pay more to get the staff than to get people out. So potentially it could make wages higher because people maybe don't want to or don't need to work as much.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know. It's all hypothetical because we
Yeah.
haven't got it yet. But they are doing a couple of pilots for this. But it's yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea that's worth discussing, and people need to get money in their pockets. And I
I
can't think of any other ideas that anyone's putting out at the moment. And yeah, and also the flip side of it is that you wouldn't necessarily pay so you could strap universal credit, or you
yeah.
could use that already to pay out, but you wouldn't need the admin. You
Yeah.
wouldn't need the means testing. You wouldn't need any of that. So there's cost saving built into it as well. Um, so yeah, I mean I'm obviously for it, but yeah, I mean
I think I think it's important that people um who can work but don't work do work, for me, if they can work, where so they would receive the universal basic income.
mhm.
So if they were receiving the same amount of money through UBI as somebody who was working and getting a high paid salary, would that not lead to conflict or?
You know, you might have to put in other policies with it.
Yeah.
Like so for me, I do believe that there's this sort of the sort of vagrancy idea or the idleness idea of and it is bad, and we know it is bad for you, and people that got locked down, definitely know that elements of that are bad for you. There is an element in which you need to socialize, in which you need to have a social function, in which you need to be doing stuff, and
Yeah.
that's good for your mental health. But there's also periods in your life when you, you need to not do anything and hide away from people. So it's that ideally it's to give people freedom, and ideally it's to give them the support to actually go on and do things like create businesses,
Yeah.
and give that space.
And
Um, so
learning, use training and
yeah,
learning.
yeah. I mean, one of the things, so I used to ask people if money was no object, like what would you do? And the top two answers for that at the time were either study or travel, which are
Yeah,
both kind of, I mean, they're both learning, aren't they, really? And I
absolutely.
think that's what most people really want to do. They want to learn things, they want to produce, they want to contribute, but they they want to learn as well. We want experiences. And it's like you saying about the ambition. It's like you were learning stuff in those businesses,
Yeah.
but that ambition was always there. It's like, I want to do more. I know I can do more.
Yes.
So, like I say, I think you would be, you would always have worked, I would say. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that? Is that,
Yeah.
yeah, you were always going to work. Are you going to, can you see yourself retiring, or are you one of these people who are like, I'm going to work until the day I die?
No, and I think I can see myself doing something different. I mean, we're 16 years old, so
Mm,
I haven't got any plans yet. But I do feel as though at some point in the future, I'd like to go down that consultancy route and
mm,
help business owners do what Ascensor's done.
mm,
Um, but I just think that I think retirement has frightened me. I think it's like, I've always done certainly with these businesses that Ascensor and my wife's business, it's what we love to do. And I
mm,
think when you do something that you love, then it doesn't feel like work. And I know what I'm like when I'm on holiday. I'm just restless. So. I think it's something that I can see myself always working. Whether I'd want a business with load of people like I've got now, I might think differently about that because I think when the more people you have, the more challenges you have because of
yeah.
the nature of life,
And the
um,
nature of people.
the nature of people. There's always a curveball. Most days,
Yeah.
something unexpected. But also it's brilliant as well, and it's great to be in a position to be able to have a team of people working with you and seeing them develop and everything. So yeah, I think I'll always work in some fashion.
Mm. Are you, I mean, in terms of your work-life balance, are you quite a workaholic, or are you very good at kind of keeping things separate and working so many hours?
Yeah, no, I work the hours that I need to work.
Yeah.
Meaning, I mean, I'm doing a full day every day, but like I left the office at 9:30 the other night. Um, 6 o'clock, I think, yesterday. But I started walking to work. I've got a puppy, so I walk here and back, which is great because it gives me really good separation. So now most days, what I like to do is finish my working day at the office and then go home.
Mm.
And I think that was one of the real downsides of certainly during the COVID year, you didn't get that separation, and that's what I don't really get with working from home. Everything all blends so I
Mm.
do like to have a working day, and just have that walking to work and walking home sort of planning and reflection time. And
Yeah, it's transition as well. I think one of the things that people, you know, uh, I don't think people appreciate it enough, the transition phase. It's like going into water. It's like you can walk slowly into the ocean or whatever, or jump in. And it's like it's the thought of that transition that's the difficult thing. It's the thought of going from dry to wet. And
yeah,
but once you're wet, you're fine. And
yeah,
while you're dry, you're fine. But the transition's the difficult thing. And it's the thing that you're like either scared of or uncomfortable with, or that you have to go through. Yeah.
absolutely. That's a great analogy. Yeah, I like that.
Um, so last have we anything more to say on UBI at the moment?
Yeah, it's not really something I'd thought about before. But yeah, it's interesting.
Mm.
I'll think about it now. It's like, what about the concept of it? Um, it's just like anything, isn't it? How will it work in practice, and how will it be sold in to to the country and for the
And
people.
also, yeah, how will people interpret that? Because you can kind of model things, but when you do a wide rollout where you've got all those variables that you didn't think about before. So, final question of my questions. If you could change any three things about your work right now, so they can be realistic, unrealistic, you don't have to use all three. But yeah, if you could change any three things about your work, what would they be? More
Uh,
space for puppies.
yeah, I think. Well, we've got loads of space. I, I can't really think of anything. I mean,
It's a hard question for a lot of
it's
people.
certainly
Honest.
three of them.
Yeah. I mean, more customers, more clients, less. Like,
Yeah, I think if we're transitioning as a business that works for larger companies, typically that they've got a marketing manager in place, whereas we grew up very much working for smaller businesses and owner managed
mm,
businesses. And so we've been, gradually sort of losing some of those smaller clients because we've not got the capacity. We're working for, you know, I guess bigger commitments from larger companies. So that's been happening. I'd want that to continue and being I'd love to have 30 big clients rather than 300 small clients, which is probably where we're going to end up.
mhm.
Um, I think I'd like to change the support that I think there's quite a lot of support for businesses like ours from a grant funding and funding, but there doesn't seem to be a lot around training and development. We've always had apprentices and brought apprentices on and tried to make it possible for them to have a full-time role after the apprenticeship. And we've got, that's happened really successfully in
Mm.
quite a few cases. But there's not a lot of training support available for you know, really building up managers and leaders. There's bits and pieces, but I
Yeah.
think if there was more support, then it's really important for me that we have a good, everybody in the business should be a leader in one way or another,
Mhm.
and I think these are skills that can be massively supported through training and development.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we are in a difficult economic climate, and I'm really pleased that we've been through this before because we're 16 years old, so we know what to expect. Doesn't make it less challenging, but we sort of it's not scary. And I think that
Mm.
for businesses like ours, you get through the other side of it, you're generally a lot stronger because you've found that where I wish what I change is that we're not in a you don't find out you're in a recession until the data tells you you've been in it for 6 months.
Yeah.
We're in a difficult time at the minute, and I wish that wasn't the case because it's very unpleasant. We've had three clients went under on us in the last 2 months of last year.
Mm.
It hasn't massively affected us. However, there was over 1,500 people made redundant from those three companies. So
Yeah.
I definitely changed that. But I do think that when you're in a recession or in these sorts of downtrends, that there are opportunities for businesses like ours that are stable, and as companies are letting people go, they're less able to deal with their clients, and those clients might want new homes and want to come to a business that they has got a longer track record and stability and stuff, which we have. So there's two sides to the coin.
Mm.
But I'd certainly change the state of affairs and state of the country, which I think is, we couldn't stop COVID happening, we couldn't stop the war happening and stuff, but I think we could have dealt with these things a lot better, and the country could have been in a bit better shape now had we done so. Obviously, sometimes you've got to, as long as the governments and people are learning from these experiences and understand another pandemic could hit, there are
Mm.
going to be war. Well, there's another war going on there. There was obviously the Ukrainian war, which affected things. There's now the war over in the Middle East and stuff. So it's say you think things are only a mistake if you do them twice, and I think the government needs to make sure that, or whatever government needs to make sure that we're prepared. We've got disaster recovery and and things in place as we do as a business when these things happen to make sure that we can continue and come out well. And I just think there were so many. I mean, I don't know if you heard any of the inquiry into COVID and stuff, that or any of the reports of that, and when they were interviewing the MPs around what they were doing and stuff, it was just a shower, really. I felt, and you know, uh, I think they took the mickey out of the British public and introduced things which the country couldn't pay for, and we're all suffering as a result of it now. And whereas at the same time, there were many. It's been so much fraud around like bounce back loans and all of that stuff that, you know, crazy, crazy. And it's good businesses like us that are picking up the tab for it.
So on the apprenticeship front, that whole thing needs to be expanded massively, and like the sort of more advanced apprenticeships and stuff, like you say, there's, and it shouldn't just be a matter of bringing pensioners back into the workforce. It's like that if you're getting pensioners on board, they should be, non-exec directs or whatever. That should be wisdom only kind of thing. It's like they shouldn't have to be going back into work, but also you should be giving young people skills, giving middle-aged people new skills and retraining them and giving them new opportunities because they've already got skills and knowledge. And like you say, they've seen businesses from different sides and can bring different experiences and perspectives and stuff. And the focus is always just like give young people a kind of half-assed course, because a lot of the time they are half-assed.
Yes.
And like the apprenticeship is only as good as the company and the provider that's giving you it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what do you think on that in terms of kind of retraining everyone, not just young people? Like, do you think that would you support something like that, for example? Would you support a scheme that was kind of retraining older people into development?
Yeah, definitely. I think that software moves really, really quickly, and there are so many things that we do now that just weren't available to learn when I was a youngster. So there must be a lot of other, middle-aged people like me that, you know, haven't been exposed to some of the things that they could be really, really good at.
Mm.
And having a balance of like world experience and commercial experience, as well as being able to do your job, is really important.
Mm.
I believe that people need to learn by their mistakes, and it's important to give people the room to do that, as long as it doesn't affect the business, and you do wash up activities to talk people through, well, if you'd have done this differently or done that differently, or in my experience, this is what I'd have done. And I think that, having older people doing some of the things that we do, certainly from a software development perspective, would be more beneficial, but they're just not on the market because there's not been these options. I think that with marketing, I don't want to be ageist or anything, but because of social media and other forms of marketing and how we digest that advertising and that content and moving so quickly, I think it needs, there's stuff now that I just wouldn't even bother setting up a TikTok. We sell TikTok services. I've got absolutely no interest in it as a person, other than I understand it and I can talk to people about whether it might be good for their business or not. But the more we embrace technology and use it, the more we need people with different levels of experience. And so, yeah, no, I do think it would be really good, but particularly from a software development perspective.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the point where I mean, I could ask you loads more questions, obviously. But this is the point where I throw it over to you. If there's anything that you want to discuss or bring up or revisit, anything that we've not covered that you want to talk about. If not, you can just give us your socials. But yeah, over to you, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, I guess you're just going to cut it about, are you? I didn't.
So I'm not too brutal on the cuts. I try and keep it minimal because I want this to be a long conversation that someone sits down and listens to, because everything on the internet is just like, it's cut to hell and segmented up. I want I want people to have a space where they can actually concentrate
Yeah.
and it's not spoon fed to you. But yeah, I mean, I can cut stuff out or I can jump around.
No, no. I mean, I guess you'll be cutting this bit out.
Probably might leave it in though. It's a podcast because you could get, it's authenticity, isn't
Oh, right. Okay.
it?
Cool. Sorry, listeners. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess just maybe finish where we started, around the way that sort of life pans out. And it was really funny with my wife, and she got this business doing gifts, and she was outsourcing all these personalized. She sells personalized gifts, so she was buying them in from places and drop shipping them. And she came back one day and she said, "I'd really like to buy a CNC laser machine." And it's like, that's what I was first recruited to go and manage at that engineering place. And
Right.
always like amused by the way that life and business and work and everything just always sorts of pans out. And I just think if you've got a really positive attitude and you see the opportunities and you take them and think about how I'm here doing what I do now, I can sort of see all of the different little things that have led to it. And like I say, there's no real plan, but it's just think if you're just happy and positive and a nice person and kind to people, then things work out and you end up getting what you want from life.
That's a nice point to end. So give us your socials then. Where can people find you?
So it's ascensor.com, ASCENSOR.com. Our social media is all under Ascensor, where it's not an English word, so not hard to find. And yeah, I mean, me on LinkedIn, so it's just Andrew Firth.
Thank you again to Andrew for being my guest. If you'd like to find out more about Ascensor and what they can do for your business, then don't forget to go and check out ascensor.com. Thanks as always to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you're in Leeds or from Leeds, if you are Leeds, then please come on the show. Yes, I am speaking to you. I still need to find 889 lawyers to interview, so being a guest is the greatest help. You'll get free advertising and media experience, and you'll be part of a unique project in our unique city. Whatever you do, I'm interested to hear about it. You don't have to be online, and you can even be anonymous if you'd like. You will enjoy it. Remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe to Working Hours, and please help to support Working Hours financially with either a regular or a one-off donation of any amount. Go to patreon.com/workinghourspod to give monthly from £1, or go to ko-fi.com/working hours to donate any amount you'd like. It's just a few clicks. It's honestly not difficult, so don't be put off. If you're a local business who would like to sponsor or pay for advertising on Working Hours, or if you'd like your locally produced products branded with Working Hours so that it could be used as merch for the show, one that ideally could be delivered locally and sustainably, then I'd love to hear from you. I have actually had my first offer for a sponsorship for the show. It's from an American company, obviously, because why would a Leeds business see an opportunity to advertise to a Leeds audience? That's crazy talk. Again, if you have any imagination and you've got any ideas for how you could help Working Hours, you can email workinghourspod@westernstudios.com. Okay, that's me. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios, Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either Working Hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loaners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast at western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.